All right, so let's go back now to one of our top stories. As you saw earlier on in the bulletin, National Treasury Acting DG Ismail Momoniat has clarified the decision to exempt Eskom from one provision of the Public Finance Management Act. And this allows the power utility to exclude reporting on irregular and wasteful expenditure. And of course, this is only going to be done in the annual reports. And of course, there is not going to be such in the financial reports. But of course, there's a lot of reaction to this particular story, and Treasury coming on now to clarify further this particular story. And the Acting National Treasury DG Ismail Momoniat joins us live now. Thank you so much, Mr. Momoniat, for your time. I'm sure you've seen a lot of reaction around this particular, update on the Eskom situation, and the Black Business Council, for example, saying this is an irrational decision. How does Treasury respond to what some have had to say?
No, let me say just some words of self-criticism. I think that when we published the Gazette, we should have had an explanatory memo to explain, because the issues are quite technical, and I think many outside may not fully understand just the workings of the system. So just to be clear, Eskom will still have to report on all irregular expenditure, all fruitless and wasteful expenditure in its annual report. The only exemption we're making is that they don't have to necessarily report it in their financial statements. And bear in mind, the financial statements are part of the annual report. But what it means then is that they are just less prone to get an audit qualification. And the audit qualification, we don't have a problem if it's in terms of financial mismanagement, then they should get qualified. But what happens is, if you take an SOE, a state-owned entity like Eskom or Transnet, firstly, they've got pretty onerous reporting requirements. They have to deal with what's called the International Accounting Standard, the IFRS, and they have to report in terms of the JSEs for their bond listings, their requirements. So it's pretty onerous. Much more onerous than a PFMA.
Yeah.
But what a PFMA has is it's got certain provisions which, for example, looks at compliance with other laws, which may not be of a financial nature. And it's not very material financially, and certainly there's no corruption involved. When that clutters up the financial statements, what tends to happen is they could get qualified because of that. So Eskom and Transnet are not level with any other company that is also listed, which wouldn't be qualified, but Eskom and Transnet would be because of these provisions. So we're just removing that likelihood. And let me just make the other point, is that the problem we face is, if and when they are qualified, then it impacts on their loan covenants. It triggers, it means that they become more reliant on fiscal guarantees and perhaps on the fiscus. And that's what the mischief we're trying to reduce. And what we're not doing is watering down any provisions to corrupt expenditure that they have to report on in their financial statements. They will still get audited, and it will still be disclosed to the public. So certainly there's corruption. We are absolutely committed 500% to make sure that that's reported and exposed.
And there's been a lot of concern, even from some, saying that why now? Because this has been asked for even for quite some time. When you think about what Andre de Ruyter had to say, the former Eskom CEO, some are saying that if you look at an interview that he did recently detailing corruption, and I'm telling at the end of your point, detailing the 1 billion rand that he claims is being lost by Eskom to corruption every month, and now this particular move, some are saying that the timing is a bit of an issue. It might be off here. Is it purely coincidental?
No, it is coincidental, and it was because the financial year was ending. And I think that within Eskom, this approach may even have started under Mr. de Ruyter's time, because they had raised it at various meetings of NICOM and so on. But we received an application from the chair of Eskom, who sent it to us on the 9th of March. And we had to respond by the 31st of March. for it to take effect. And this exemption is not different from one that we gave to Transnet last year, who had the same problem, that they were getting qualified for some of the state capture issues which still featured in their financial statements. And so what we did is we're beginning to differentiate between, firstly, the historic, but secondly, some of the as a result of state capture, some of the weaknesses in reporting processes that they have, that we're putting that in the annual report, and they'll report on it fully at the same time as they would before. And that section, we will engage with the AG, as we did with Transnet, to ensure that even that bit gets audited, but it's audited separate from their financial statements.
And part of it, I'm sure you can understand, and I was going through your statement talking about how this is also to go back to the original intent of making sure that the managers, now manage. But given the history of Eskom, we've seen that there have been serious problems in this particular regard. So I'm sure you can understand why South Africans are skeptical when they see a move like this one. And certainly one wants to know, how then are they not going to find themselves in a situation where Eskom found itself in and continues to find itself in? How will there be accountability?
Yes, and I think that's the important question, because certainly I don't blame people for being skeptical given what we've had. And bear in mind, Eskom and Transnet were reporting these issues before, from 2010 to 2017, and they still got clean audits. So, this particular reporting doesn't pick up on corruption particularly. And in fact, our intention is to focus so that if there are any suspicious or corrupt transactions, that they actually do get reported in the financial statements. And we focus on exposing that and acting on it. We don't want that to be drowned in a whole lot of other non-financial and minor transgressions where we do need to act, but you act differently. It's not that money's been stolen or so. And certainly where the Treasury sits, as I said, for us, if these entities get needlessly qualified, where other companies would not be qualified, so we're not trying to hide from investors. The information is there, investors are smart enough to read it, but at least they're on the same level playing field as other companies. But where there's issues of corruption, it will get reported and there will be a focus. And the Treasury will act pretty brutally if and when we find such instances.
All right, so many questions, but unfortunately, we're now out of time. But hopefully we speak about this again, because when we talk about leveling the playing fields and looking at what has been happening at Eskom, one really still has a lot of questions. But let me thank you for your time. That is Acting National Treasury Director General, Mr. Ismail Momoniat. And this is a story, of course, that will continue to track for you and bring you more on.